area median income, and that can be problematic, especially for an affordable housing developer, because it doesn't allow for any flexibility. Essentially, the buyer has to be at exactly 80%, earning 80% of the area median income. If they earn below that, they're going to be cost burdened, and it could be hard for them to get a loan, or to get approved for the home. And if they earn over that, currently under our bylaw, they wouldn't be in compliance with the bylaw. So this just allows homes that are affordable at 80% AMI to be marketed to be sold or leased to households earning up to 100% area median income. And the same with homes affordable at 100% area median income must be sold or leased to households earning less than 120% area median income. It just allows for a little bit of flexibility.
Wow, that's fascinating. I never thought of that. But if they're at 75%, they're automatically not able to afford the house. So,
right.
Yeah.
What about affordable dwellings that are being sold for above the 80%? I mean, last year we had a house, perpetually affordable home, sell for $750,000.
Right, and that's a different issue related to the type of covenant that we had been operating under, which was not a good affordability covenant, and we are working on changing that. But this really has to do with income limits and not the sale price.
Yeah. Thank you for working on this. I think both are just as important.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. And then in Chapter 11, which is including affordable homes and growth management, there's a section on the residential growth target. So up until the current town plan, we had a residential growth target of 80 dwellings per fiscal year, and that was a maximum. And so now, under state statute, we have housing targets that we have to try to meet. And those housing targets provide that we're supposed to try to, if you look at the medium target, we're supposed to try to achieve 126 dwellings per year. So those two things are sort of conflicting. If you keep the 80% maximum target, then you're not really complying with state statute, and you're not aligning with the town plan. So this just kind of aligns that residential growth target with what the town plan says and with what state statute says. How will it achieve the growth target? We're still going to require high standards. We're going to allow some flexibility in meeting those standards. We're going to exempt from growth management those developments that meet inclusionary zoning requirements. In the Taft Corners Form-Based Code District, development review has been streamlined while also setting high standards. And that's pretty much it. And then in Chapter 13, access, connectivity, traffic studies, we've developed a new table that specifies driveway width standards for dwellings of different, developments of different sizes. We've made the driveway widths narrower for smaller developments, and just clarified what those widths need to be, because in the current bylaw it says the driveways need to be from 12 to 16 feet, and so we're just adding some clarity to that. Okay. And then, under Chapter 14, there's a paragraph about increasing the number of permitted off-street parking spaces by building a parking structure or solar canopy. We've just added some clarification where the incentive is a solar canopy, and basically just saying the incentive's available where at least 35% of the proposed off-street parking spaces are in the structure or solar canopy.
People want to put in more parking and we don't allow it? Is that, and we're saying you can have more if you put a solar canopy?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought people usually complained because they had to put parking in they didn't want to put in. Now it's the other way around, so, okay.
Some developers want more parking, and others want less parking.
parking.
So we have, either way, we have some flexibility where they can try to, have more or have less. And under Chapter 15, neighborhood parks, so this, the beginning of this chapter had a lot of language that was tied to a chapter in the town plan that no longer exists and language in the town plan that doesn't exist. The language in the previous town plan was kind of regulatory in tone, which is not really appropriate for a town plan. And so this, what we've done is sort of amend this to reflect the new town plan, and to allow some flexibility around neighborhood parks while still requiring access to a neighborhood park. And then exempting small subdivisions in which the provision of a useful park is not feasible. So a neighborhood park won't be required in any residential development that has fewer than 15 dwellings.
Is a park, that's different than the open space requirement.
That's correct, yeah.
So I used to live in a 50 house.
Are there any examples of this in the pipeline for developments right now, Melinda?
Trying to think.
Something off Mountain View Road?
Well, there's Sally's Way, which I think was 14 dwelling units. They don't, I think in that case, it wouldn't be feasible for them to provide a neighborhood park. I think most of the, if not all of the land outside of where they're putting the houses and the streets is wetland, so like that wouldn't work. Trying to think of
But
any
the bigger
others.
ones are required to have a park.
Right.
If you have more than 50.
Unless they're within a quarter mile of an existing neighborhood park where they don't have to cross an arterial road. Basically, that's the language.
What about like an apartment building that has 30 units? Would that require a park?
Let's see. I mean, yeah, technically, I think it would. Yeah. Unless it's, unless it's within a quarter mile of the, unless there's an existing park within a quarter mile.
Should there be exemptions to this? For example, down at Taft Corners in the growth center? This encourage more building down there?
Right. I mean, this doesn't, this language doesn't have that kind of exemption in it. And I think a neighborhood park, I mean, it doesn't really specify what that looks like in here. So it could be something small-ish, depending on, you know, what surrounding land is available. Of course, yeah.
Maybe we should have some type of, you know, ideas on what a neighborhood park entails based upon the number of homes, whether it's green space or,
It's probably all in the chapter I didn't read, right? So if I read chapter 15, it'll all be.
probably.
I didn't read the red line version, so,
Right.
Sorry to make more work.
but these,
Oh, no.
but essentially, this is clarifying if you're a small development, you can get a waiver or it's not required. That's essentially what the change is.
Yeah, yeah, if the development has fewer than 15 dwellings, yes, but otherwise, access to a neighborhood park will be required. Questions on that?
Nope.
Okay, and then finally, in Chapter 19, there's a section on transfer of development rights, which is basically where the right to develop on a parcel of land is transferred to a parcel, to a non-contiguous parcel. And this was used in the previous bylaw to, basically, if you wanted to protect if you wanted to incentivize a landowner protecting land that was in the ARZD, they could, basically, if a developer wanted to buy those development rights from that landowner, they could use those development rights somewhere else, like somewhere in Taft Corners. And then we adopted form-based code, which basically eliminated that requirement, that density requirement. So it was no longer really relevant in the Taft Corners form-based code. It is still relevant in other zoning districts, such as the RZD. So what this says is that you can still have transfer development rights from lands in the ARZD or from conservation areas shown on the town plan map 16. In other zoning districts, like there might be a conservation area in a different zoning district from the ARZD, you can transfer those development rights to any other zoning district that allows residential development except the ARZD. So that's kind of what that says. And that,
In other words, the developer is not able to purchase something that's already conserved in another section of town to be able to build on an area that is conserved.
not sure I understand the
I
question.
kind of have the same question, why, I guess I don't understand what development rights mean. If you own a piece of property and it's zoned for development, can't you just get in line to develop it?
So this, right, so what this would do is to basically give you a density bonus. So that it would allow you to develop beyond the density limits of the
zone.
zoning district.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense to you?
Sorry, I didn't explain that.
No, you probably assumed we knew, but I was like acting dumb, so. So does that answer your question, Mike?
I don't know. I'm not real sure. I'm just trying to think of an example. You know, I think about, Frank, you know, like trying to think of the name of the road. I can't think of the name of the road where there's several acres that are conserved. You know, I just want, you know, a developer purchasing land that's already conserved to be able to develop on land that is conserved already.
Yes, so,
Trying to prevent that from happening.
so they wouldn't be able to, they wouldn't be able to let's see, purchase development rights from lands that are already conserved, because those development rights have already been purchased by whoever conserved the property, if that makes sense. It's
You
only,
know, like Fieldstone Drive, someone wouldn't be able to purchase the conserved land on Fieldstone Drive from the HOA to be able to, you know, build homes on other land that's conserved, that they own, they buy. Not, you know, because conserved land is cheap, you know, conserved land really has no value, you know, as far as money goes. So, you know, developers could buy up a lot of conserved land in town and then just,
So I think, if I'm hearing correctly, and correct me if I got this wrong, this has nothing to do with conserved land. This is buildable properties.
correct, yeah, and,
So if I
We could-
have 10 acres next to the Isham farm, and I'm thinking I can put a couple of houses on there, and instead I say, well, I'll forego that,
yeah,
but I can only put 5 houses on my property on Mountain View in the development south of Mountain View. And if you give me 8, we can call it a transfer.
exactly,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, but that wouldn't apply to, like, you know, if conservation rights have been sold to somebody else, then you can buy the land as, you know, knock yourself out and have fun having picnics on it or whatever, but just because you bought the land, you have title to it now, doesn't mean you have title to the development rights. Those are owned by somebody else. And
Right.
you can't buy what somebody doesn't have to sell you.
Yeah, it's like.
Correct.
they make-
Yeah, okay.
So nothing to do with conserved
Yeah.
land, it has to do with buildable lands.
Right,
yeah, thank you.
yeah, so that's my run-through. Do you have any more questions, any other questions,
Questions for Melinda?
comments?
Any debates or controversies from the planning commission in coming? It seems all pretty clear, but was there anything we should be aware of before we take this to the public? Anything come up during the, Matt, you're looking guilty over there, like you want to say something?
I'm looking at, sorry, I'm looking at the few planning commission members we have over to speak on the next item. But no, I think we tried to get the verbiage correct in the Chapter 11 edits to reflect the new reality we're in with housing targets.
Right.
And I think I've mentioned a couple times to folks that the affordability calculation just takes some thinking through in terms of how you make sure that an affordable home is available to someone who can afford to buy it without becoming immediately cost burdened. And I think once we'd worked through those, this was all relatively small and uncontroversial stuff and cleanup level policy changes with the few exceptions that Melinda's highlighted tonight. I'll put in a plug for the increased guarantees for improvements percentage. We find that a number of our peer communities already do that, and we think it just provides really good motivation to make sure that promised required improvements in new developments do happen and happen in a timely way, in a high quality way that the town demands from its approved developments.
Is that a common issue that developers are not doing that?
Sometimes we find that required improvements are put in very slowly. With landscaping, there can just be a challenge of timing in terms of time of the year or ensuring survival. The other thing is with things like landscaping, where we go to, once we've certified that material has been put in, we go to a percentage of the guarantee that's retained for another 3 years to ensure survival. So by operation of this change, that amount of money becomes compelling for someone to remember to call us up 3 years later and say, hey, my trees lived. Please come out and give me back the rest of my money. And really, it does make a difference. If you go around and look at developments and look at places where those kinds of things, whether it's landscaping stock or bike racks or benches or all of those little extra things, parking lot striping for handicap spaces, et cetera, where those things have gone in the right way and they're well maintained and they're durable, it really adds to the high quality of the development that the town expects from people. So just giving everybody some motivation to pay attention to some of the things that basically cost developers money and don't make them any money, but really make a difference for the town. I won't make any more faces from the audience. I didn't plan on speaking on the bylaw tonight, but, yeah, we'll bring some controversial changes another time.
Oh, good.
All right. Till then, what happens on the planning commission stays on the planning commission.
Well, I really appreciate, I know this is, these are small things that add up, but it's tedious work. I mean, going through all of this and all of your efforts, Melinda, and everybody in the committee, commission, everybody involved in this. It's a lot of work for small things sometimes, so.
It's also just nice to bring the bylaw into accordance with the new town plan. So it's tedious, but it's sort of another celebratory step in moving forward with implementing the new plan. So feel good about that.
Right.
So if there are no further questions, there is a proposed motion for a public hearing.
I move to warn a public hearing on proposed amendments to the town's unified development bylaw.
Is there a second?
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 Is there further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 There are no nays. The motion carries. We will schedule a public hearing. So,
Thank you.
great.
Thank you, Melinda.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
So, next item on the agenda, short-term rental ordinance discussion. So,
I can kick this off.
Yeah, if you could,
For the
please.
Staff Planning Commission. The Williston Planning Commission's request of the Select Board consider implementing a short-term rental ordinance in town. This would affect properties available to rent on sites like Airbnb, Verbo. Includes some materials in your agenda packet. There's the commissioner here as well as planning staff. Town staff seeking direction from the Select Board whether this is something it wishes to pursue further. If so, staff will examine possible language and elements of an ordinance at an interdepartmental level and consult with the town attorney further. And remind the board, it's been a few years since we've talked about the larger and related regulatory framework of a rental registry and inspection program in the town for public safety. It's been kind of floating out there for a few years as something to keep in mind as you're looking at these type of regulations. That's something to kind of on the forefront here too, is thinking about. Right.
I thought this was all about me because I kind of remember like my first or second meeting going, how come we don't have one of these? And now it's like, if I don't get reelected, almost the end of my term. So I just if you're going to at some point get to it, I was just wondering what the definition of a short-term rental was specifically. So if you're going to get to that, that's fine, but.
Turn it over to everybody.
I think it's
On it.
a rental that's not rented for more than 30 days during a calendar year, 30 consecutive days.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well, is usually when communities adopt an ordinance like that, they'll set a short term by that definition. It's something less than an apartment. It's usually 30 days or a month, something like that.
The reason I ask is I know people who like rent it out for the eclipse, like it's a one-off or it's 5
Yeah.
days a year or something like that, and they would probably, I would assume they wouldn't have to go through all the hoops, but I just didn't know if you had a working definition yet.
Yeah, so this is something the Planning Commission did put some work into starting a little over a year ago, and there was interest on the commission in requesting that the Select Board move forward with something. As staff, we advised that regulating short-term rentals is best handled under an ordinance as opposed to making it an element of zoning. One of the reasons for that is that when you issue a zoning permit, you issue a permit that's essentially forever. As long as someone continues to do the thing that you gave them a zoning permit for, they get to do it off into the future. If they cause a nuisance or do something else, you might regulate that, but you can't really take the permit back. Permits that fall from ordinances are more like a license or like the temporary event permit, where you can time limit them and you can revoke them. So without getting too much into the weeds about how the work the Planning Commission did in draft would define a short-term rental or require its regulation or allow or prohibit certain types of short-term rental, My understanding is this is really before the select board under the question of should the select board move forward or put in any time or effort into working on an ordinance going forward from tonight. And there's a couple members of the Planning Commission here to answer questions about why the Planning Commission said, yes, they think that you should. There's some procedural discussion about how this might fit in with other types of ordinances related to rental safety and inspection that Manager Wells can talk through as well. Melinda and I are really just here as the staff saying, here's this thing the Planning Commission worked on and wanted moved to the Select Board, and here they are. And it's for discussion by the board, and we can provide a support role as requested. So that's why I sat back down, because yeah, we may have members of the Planning Commission come up.
Yeah, that'd be
We'll get
great,
out of the way.
actually.
Yeah, the chair, Shayla, the chair's on.
Yeah, Shayla,
Oh.
you want to have Shayla first?
Shayla, I've missed you.
Sorry, I'm not there in person. Thank you for even considering this. So, yeah, I wanted to explain a little bit about what we're thinking, and members in the room, please also join me here. But really what we've seen in other communities, and we haven't seen it here yet, is issues that arise when there are a lot of short-term rentals, especially in concentrated areas or in areas that are, primarily residential. And so we wanted to get ahead of that. So this is really a conversation, not because it's an existing problem that's, bad and scary in Williston right now, but because we want to make sure that our intentions and laws are clear, and prevent the problems that we've seen arise in other communities when they don't, exist ahead of time. The other piece is that if we put this together now and we have it in place, then we're not changing the law on people who, when and if people start to develop and use short-term rentals more in Williston. One of the big things that we've thought about is, maintaining a sense of community and having, especially in residential areas, people who live here. Long-term rental's great, but, short-term rental, you get people just cycling in and out. There is definitely an impact on the community. And then there's a whole host of noise and crash and other pieces that go with it. I did want to tell the select board that we've already done something about it, and we don't want to create a huge, big, new regulatory system right now, or at least the Planning Commission did not come to the conclusion that that was necessary in this space, and that we could just take some fairly simple measures to make the intentions of the town clear and sort of prevent and preserve some of the things that we think are important to folks in Williston that we've heard from during a lot of our different conversations through town plan, et cetera. And that it's not one of these things where we think it will cost a lot of money or require a lot of new infrastructure, all those pieces. I think Eric mentioned a registry and what would really be necessary if we were to do sort of a bigger push on inspection of rentals broadly. And again, I think there's an opportunity here to do something that is fairly streamlined. If we wanted to do that, that would have sort of the desired outcome for folks who live here. So I guess my plug is I really encourage the select board to consider this and to consider doing this now so that we don't have a problem in the future. And as a planning commission, we have done a lot of thinking about it, and we would love to share that with you if you're interested in the future. And I don't know if my fellow folks are at the table.
To add on to what Shayla said, I think when we discussed this, it was to rephrasing. You asked what's the definition of a short-term rental? And we've obviously put time and thought into certain definitions and aspects of ways that it could be shaped, but it's before you kind of today to say, is this something we should consider further? And those are all aspects that it's all right, let's iterate from there. I think, as a big rough pass, if I was to summarize probably what's in it right now, it's that it's preventative, and that, you know, the big rough pass overgeneralization is that you can have a short-term rental, you can have up to 2 if you live on property. And so that's like the very overgeneralization that I'm sure is, I'm like maybe getting some looks back there, but like that's the big overgeneralization. The idea is, like Shayla said, you know, we want to be clear ahead of time, and that, like, you know, someone purchasing a property specifically for the use of short-term rentals isn't like a fully community integrated experience here. But like from our housing assessments, we do know that there is a mismatch of size of, say, homes for the size of families that are trying to like fit in them. And so if it is a mechanism to stay in your home, to rent a portion of it out, that seems like a very valid thing to do, and that we want to support as like a kind of as an institution.
I think one of the things that we were discussing in the meeting though is more towards if there are people who just purchase it for the sole intention of this, should we find a means and way to make sure that those are with some sort of regulation or some sort of bylaw to prevent way ahead now instead of 5 years down the road when that becoming a problem. Like we can start with very simple registration kind of process, right? Not full blown, you know, very stringent, but I think we should start from there. Then we can work our way through review and, you know, do it different things. But I think we should start something simple, something very, you know, basic level of coverage. That's what we were proposing.
I like your intent statement, which is we're trying to prevent people buying up homes in order to use short-term rentals. And I appreciate the sensitivity to there may be situations where someone in the home may need to rent space in order to keep their home rented out for UV and weekend, or maybe when they're gone for summer, I rent it out for 2 weeks, but that's not buying a home to rent out. So with that sort of overarching intent, I think this is overdue. I totally agree with the comment that we want to get ahead of this, because it only gets harder if you now have people who have bought up properties and you're changing the rules on them. That gets harder. So why not have something in place to at least let people know when they're considering purchasing a home for this purpose that we have thought of it, and it's going to require some work on their part.
Yeah, and I would love it if Williston became a tourist destination and, you know, lots of people wanted to flock here and, you know, rent spaces. Do I see that necessarily happening? No, but I think that you know, we have seen what short-term rentals has done to the affordability of housing nationally and within our state, and I think that getting ahead of that when we are actively working to increase the affordability of housing in our town, if we don't do something, it feels counterproductive to our stated goals. So I think it makes sense.
You know, it may not be
I
tourism.
believe if we started a short-term rental ordinance, how would it be enforced? What if nobody signed up for it? What if your neighbor was doing it, but they didn't sign up for it? How, you know, what would you do about that? And if there were problems with a property that was short-term rental, how would you enforce any actions?
Shayla's got her
Go
hand.
for it, Shayla.
So it's a great question, Mike, and that's definitely part of what we've gone through and thought about, because we don't, like, we're sensitive to the fact that we're not looking to add like a big enforcement arm of the town staff. And so the way that we thought about it and structured it, you know, it's not proactive enforcement. It's not, you know, it is like Mickey was saying, it starts softer. And like Greta was saying, because it's not a big issue, that like by preventing it, you know, that's really the main mechanism here. And then it would potentially be complaint based. Again, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, because we do have some stuff drafted, and we would love to come back, and once you've been able to read that and go through it, if this is something that you all want to see, and we can sort of talk through what our thoughts are on those pieces. But I think, Mike, your point is really well made, which is that when we think about how we structure it, we don't want to structure it in a way that sort of adds a whole bunch of bureaucracy, especially costly bureaucracy. That is not the goal, and I think that it is very doable without doing that.
You know, like right now, HOAs have rules. You can't have a motor home in your driveway. You can't have a boat. You can't put a clothesline up. Not supposed to put a swing set in without a permit, or, you know, there's numerous rules that they have. You know, what about the HOAs in the residential areas having their own HOA rules that require no, you know, why should it be a town-wide issue? You know, someone who lives out in a residential area like yourself. Nobody's gonna know what you're doing up there where you live.
You will.
I don't, but I'm not gonna pay attention.
Well, I think it's still a matter of us, like, not wanting to, like, we've seen the effects of affordability in housing when things are purchased specifically for short-term rental, whether or not that's in the, you know, the ARZD or in the village or wherever. And so even if an HOA says, no, you can't have any rentals, that's kind of amongst the HOA themselves. But as a town, if we say, no, we need to take these preventative measures kind of for the sake of the town, for homeownership, for all these other reasons, like, that's kind of entirely separate, and it doesn't necessarily matter where you live if we're thinking about things like housing affordability.
Yeah, and I think it's equity. What you're getting at, Hannah, is it's an equity issue. Like the HOAs, I do not want to continue to rely on HOAs as the, like, sort of mechanism for a whole bunch of things that you know, in some cases we have had relied on them for. And I think it does behoove us to start to think more holistically so that we have fairness and equality throughout the town structure. I mean, something like the village, you know, the Williston Village doesn't have an HOA, and that, you know, that would be a place where if all of a sudden there was a bunch of short-term rentals that were owned by a company that wasn't here, you know, you could see some real problems. And so I take your point that it would be more problematic in some areas than in others, but it's not. I think we can't rely on those private agreements. The good news is, I do want to tell you the good news, that you, no matter what, you're allowed to have a clothesline now. So that was, the state did overrule that HOA ability to prohibit clotheslines.
How about chickens, Ted?
No, we're not bringing up chickens right now.
Yeah. No.
I think, though, we, you know, in looking at this really semi-aggressive target of, you know, what is it, 126, you know, new residences added annually, you know, and these multi-unit dwellings that a lot of that number is going to have to come from, you are looking at people potentially coming in and saying, sure, I'm going to buy 15 of these units and they're all going to be short-term rentals unless we have something in place. Yeah. And yeah.
I agree. I think this is something we should explore. My concern is that the devil's going to be in the details. I mean, if, you know, I was thinking of scenarios as we've been sitting here, like if there is a couple in their 70s and they have a chance to become snowbirds somewhere, and the only way they can afford to do that is to rent their home that they raise their children and visit their grandchildren in Williston, Vermont, from November through March or April. I don't want those people to be suddenly, or even in the future, shut out.
We discussed this exact case, came up in our discussion, and so it's definitely like, yes, it's going to be in the details. And so I'm not saying the thing that's in front of you is perfect and has covered them, but like, it's like, if we're going to do it, we need to hammer them out.
Yeah, and I guess I am in no way, shape, or form a libertarian, but I also, you know, think when there is such a thing as property rights, and when you own something, there's, you know, the way the system, and this is obvious, so I guess I'm really just saying this for myself, but when you own something, you get to do with it what you want, unless there is a law or a regulation or ordinance that says you can't. You know, and so, I mean, I think that's the starting point philosophically that I go by. That being said, I'm the first one to think that there should be, a noise ordinance, and that, the people shouldn't be allowed to, do crazy things. But I do want to watch out for people if they say, look, this is my long-term retirement plan involved exactly this. I don't want those people to be unnecessarily constrained.
Yeah. Even for cases like this, right, what we are also considering is we need to have, if in case, right, something happened while they are in Florida, right, we need to have somebody actively managing this place while they are away. So that kind of clause is what we are looking for, not prohibiting them from doing it. It's more of, even while they are away, someone will take care of this when something happens, kind of thing. Those are the type of stuff that we're talking about. We're not talking about prohibiting. It's more of, if you do this, what sort of support structure you have it so that it doesn't disturb everybody else.
Sure, but again, I don't want to get way into the details when we're not even, we're just talking conceptually, but if, I can also see people saying, well, why would, I don't need an on-site, on-site's too strong a term, but I don't need a designated agent specifically, because if there's a plumbing issue, the people who are renting are going to tell me, and I use John like I've used for years. He's my plumber. If there's an electrical issue, I have, Susie, she comes over and does all my stuff. I don't, so I mean, it would depend on what the specifics look like, so that we're covering the bases, but we're not prohibiting, we're not getting past common sense.
Yeah, we need to be mindful of those things, yes. Agreed.
But
Yeah, I don't think affordability is an excuse on it, When we talk about tax increases, property tax increases every year, that's a bigger issue on affordability than people, 3% of the buildings in the town of Williston being rented short-term.
So there's no formal action that is required tonight, but.
Yeah, my suggestion would be, if the select board wants to pursue an ordinance with this regulatory framework, I would take your direction. I would look and see what the planning commission's looked at previously. I'd want to stand up a staff team with some senior staff members for an interdepartmental review, just how this could be potentially operationalized, think about some of these elements of it, and probably bring that back to you, and then have your utilize your policy advisory boards too to weigh in on that. But I haven't looked at this at an operational level. Just want to get the board's direction if it's something you're interested in pursuing first.
Unfortunately, we're not the first ones to think of this ordinance, so hopefully you can help, your town manager peers can help you out with some of that. Because I think that this is really important to have something in place, to have a framework in place, just for all the reasons that have been articulated. I'm not really sure I would make this the biggest thing on your plate, Eric, so, but I think other towns have gone through a lot of those hoops already, so hopefully it won't be that.
Yeah, that's where it typically look, and then just kind of understanding what the potential workload is at a staff level, just to make sure we're set up the right way for that.
So we give a straw poll of yes, or do you want to?
Yeah.
Is there public comments open for this?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm Alan Cote. I live on Bradish Lane in Williston, and I've met with Matt on this particular issue. And I'll say that some of the issues that have been brought up, not wanting to restrict, say, snowbirds renting their house out, or Gene, as you said, the eclipse, you want to rent your house out for the week. Great. If you have an accessory dwelling unit, part of your property has another unit. You want to rent that out as a short-term rental. Great. All those things don't seem problematic. In my case, Bradish Lane is essentially a driveway for 3 residences. One of them is a short-term rental. It was purchased as a short-term rental. It's never been owner occupied. The owners live in Essex. I have a good relationship with them. It's not adversarial. And we've tried to resolve some of the issues between the short-term renters coming onto my property. Just by the nature of what you have, some of those things can't really be solved. So, essentially what I have is a commercial property, a hotel that's part of a private 3-person driveway. And I'll say that 5 times in the last 3 years, I've had a short-term renter walk into my house with no knock, opening the door, thinking they were walking into the short-term rental. That's pretty startling. And I'm not like a gun nut or something, but like that could be a really bad situation. Or I could have a vicious dog. There's all sorts of things. So, I've been cordial and such, but, this is clearly problematic, in my case. And while my case may be somewhat unique, as short-term rentals grow, this problem is just going to come up more and more through the town. So, I do encourage the select board to look at this, to consider an ordinance. Again, not to restrict people who maybe have a much more manageable situation. If they lived in the neighboring property or something, great. They would be able to manage things. But essentially, you have an unsupervised hotel with no staff on site, and people just coming in at whatever hours, at midnight, whenever it is. And, I don't have any recourse on that. And again, it's not a confrontational situation with the owners. We're cooperative, but it's just inherent in having what's essentially a hotel in a private residence. So I do encourage everyone the select board to look at this. I'll also say, as others have said, that, this property is now, it was, privately owned by the Bradish family, who, were longtime residents of Williston. They moved into a retirement home. And, since then, this is now a short-term rental. There's not a family who's living there or individuals living there, either as owners or as long-term renters. So this is taken out of the housing market, which just does not seem like it's in the town's interest. So that's my comments on the topic, and I hope the select board will consider taking up that ordinance.
Thank you. Thank you. So, yeah, Eric, sounds like you have enough direction?
Yep, I've got direction. No,
So-
thank you. And we'll be doing the work plan coming up as well. And we'll start doing some preliminary work on this coming up over the next month.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you,
thank you,
everybody.
And
everybody.
all the planning commission members, and
Yes.
thank you. Thanks, Shayla.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks. So that would bring us to our next agenda item, the manager's report.
A few things I'll highlight this evening. Remember to go near the microphone and talk. Good news on our radio communications tower project. We received our certificate of public good for that. That's big news, and that stays with it forever. So we've cleared that regulatory hurdle to get that from the Public Utilities Commission. I think Assistant Town Manager Aaron Dickinson and our staff team from Public Safety that did a ton of work on this, and our legal team to assist with that. All went smoothly. So we've got the land lease locked up. We've got the permit, the certificate of public good locked up. Those are the 2 big prerequisites. We've got an FAA approval before. We can reapply for that once we have a timeline defined for moving forward with that project. So those are the 2 really big things to get out of the way, and now it's figure out
2 of the 3.
how to pay for it. So we will.
Little one left.
We're engaging a technical consultant to help us get this to the next point of what's a realistic cost estimate for this, for the site work and the different tower, and then the components to it as well, think about any phasing opportunities. So we'll be engaging that person hopefully in the short term. We've left some ARPA money in that project account as anticipating that need with a little extra legal, as Shirley put the numbers together for what was left that you allocated towards the library. We left some remaining that we knew had this remaining scope for the project to get to the point to consider moving forward with construction. So that's moving along. That's good news. Just want to recognize our fire department's recruit academy graduation that was held last Friday. Our 3 new recruits who have moved to probationary firefighters are Alexandra Bordeaux, Stephen Garcia, and Landon Baker. I believe their 8-week training academy. Recognized the graduation ceremony last Friday. And with them joining shifts this week, we've begun our peak staffing shifts. Yesterday, Monday's February 2nd, that was with the board and approved with an MOU last fall, so that's getting underway this week, so that's exciting.
Are we
for the
fully
department
staffed
and the
except
town.
for our battalion chief or our training? Are we fully staffed?
Town.
Close?
We're getting one.
I feel like every time we say this about any department, it's like a.
No, police got here for a good month.
Yeah.
Bruce doesn't seem to have trouble finding people.
Thank you. Don't say these things out loud, Ted.
That was a dig at the chief, actually.
I shared in your packet there, CJC, we're holding listening sessions Friday and Monday as part of the move towards the regional structure for the CJC. So those are open to folks who have been engaged in the communities, volunteers, panel members, certain things, select board members are interested. Just let me know. It's Friday.
Who's hosting that?
It's gonna be Friday at South Burlington Police Station at 10.
But who's the host?
Essentially, all the towns, the town managers, and just Burlington, everyone that's been working, our steering committee that's been working on it, I guess is the best context for it.
Okay.
Those are coming up.
I forget the dates, but I looked at the dates and I couldn't attend, but would love to kind of be updated on, where things are leading and what, that's going to be looking like, because we are getting close to that kind of June deadline there. And so would really like to kind of have an update about, where the vision is right now.
Yeah, this will be a good time for it as things are kind of moving to that phase of really operationalizing it. Our steering committees, we're starting to put out a framework of an MOU that will need to be approved by this board and other boards. So after these listening sessions, I think that'll be a good time for an update either at your next meeting or the March meeting.
Great, thank you.
I met with the advisory group last night. We're meeting every once or twice a month, and they've been engaged and helpful to help advise me in this process. What's coming up? Then I just want to thank our staff for that winter storm, biggest one we've had in a little bit here. We had about 15 inches at the airport, so actually there's more snow in the hillier parts of town here. So did a great job. Just want to recognize our public works staff. It's a lot's big lift between them and the sidewalk plowing as well. So the job well done. That's all I have.
Great. That would bring us to other business. Is there any other business?
2 catering permits. First is this Friday. It's a tasting event from Four Quarters Brewing at Healthy Living. From like 4 to 7. They've done this type of thing before in the store. We don't have any concerns with this type of use.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 There are no nays. It is approved.
Second's a catering permits for the maple sugaring on Bradley Lane. They've done this the last couple of years for the open house. They have a temporary event permit that we've approved at the staff level for this already. They've done this the last 3 or 4 years, I think. It's gone well each year. Catering is Bevo Catering. We don't have any concerns with the event permit approved. Sugar Tree Maple Farm, and that's taking place March 21st and 22nd for Maple Open House.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 There are no nays. It is approved.
1 month until town meeting day today.
Mike, will we see you back in person before town meeting day?
No, I'll be back probably in May.
Okay.
Wow.
I do a final thought.
Okay. Yeah, and that would bring us to final thoughts on items from this meeting.
It was just a thought about the public hearings. I don't know if you guys are regular Digger readers, but the state's starting to talk about public hearings for ordinance changes or law changes, just having it in there. And it's like, that's the first time I've ever seen it. So I just wondering, like, I don't know how people find out about our public hearings unless they're really engaged. And I was just thinking if there was a way to put them, in, I don't know I'm sure we're putting them in the Observer because that's our official thingy, but I'm not sure anybody's reading that page. So it would be kind of interesting to put it on Front Porch Forum and see if, when we do have it.
Yeah, and we've done that previously, but maybe we could be more intentional about it moving forward there.
And nothing doesn't have to be something big that people aren't going to read. Just if there was something on there about we're having an ordinance about changing the zoning in whatever, people might say, oh, that's interesting, and might look into it. That's all.
Yeah. The annual report for the select board. Did you have any?
Yeah, I sent an email out to people, and with Jean's modifications, are there any suggestions, or is that okay?
Looks good to me.
Yeah.
Okay,
I sent an
All
email
right.
back, yeah. It was-
okay. So I'll send you an email
Okay.
with it. So
Let's go to the printer by Friday.
I'll send it
All right.
tomorrow by 7:30 a.m.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, with that concludes our agenda, and I will declare that we are adjourned.